responsibilities. Finally, with respect to probationers, the new rating forms still require appointing authorities to make the crucial remove or retain decision on the basis of ratings that may not accurately reflect the probationer's work. Mr. Chairman, committee members, we can do better. We can do better than this. 4 million Angelenos want civil service to be honest and efficient. At the very least, that means the rules on employee selection must be followed. And enforcing Civil Service Rule 126 would be a step in the right direction. Here's a very simple proposal. The Board of Civil Service Commissioners, which under the Charter has the power and duty to make and enforce civil service rules, and the power and the duty to oversee the civil service system, could be asked to approve a temporary rating form for new appointees. Such a form might look something like the one you received in my handout. Department managers could then be asked to consider using the temporary rating form in field testing, a new way to assess the work of probationers. If the managers accept this new approach, the temporary rating form for new appointees could be proposed for general use throughout the city. That probably would be over a period of time. If and when that happens, Civil Service Rule 126 will be enforced. The probationary period will, I think, for the first time be used as a valid working test. The city's selection process will have been significantly strengthened, and the public's right to an honest, efficient civil service will have been confirmed. And that's my statement.
Thank you. Have you gone to the Civil Service Commission on this matter?
Oh, yes. I have made 33 appearances before the Civil Service Commission.
And what'd they tell you?
Each time, well, that's just the commission appointed by Villaraigosa, Mayor Villaraigosa. I appeared before the commission when Tom Bradley was the mayor, when Richard Reardon was the mayor, and then when Jimmy Hahn was the mayor. And I've been pushing for this job-specific, performance-based probationary rating for probably, well, I know over 15 years, maybe as much as 20 years. And the commissioners have not been receptive to the idea.
Okay, so you've had different commissioners from different mayors, and obviously...
Well, I've written to the mayor about it, but the mayor has never responded to my letters. I don't know how many letters I've sent him, but the only response I've received from him was a standard, "Thank you for your letter. It helps me do a better job as mayor." I got that when I was critical of him, and I got that when I praised him for something. Same response. No response.
Okay. Can we hear from the city folks on this matter that you've heard from Mr. Sperling? Ms. D?
Yes, the city attorney and personnel department have a joint report, verbal report. The city attorney's portion of the report, to the extent that detailed legal analysis would be required from the department or from the personnel committee, we wouldn't do that in open session. But as a general matter, Civil Service Rule 1.26 does have limitations and restrictions inherent within the language. For example, the authority is vested with the city departments to determine what method or manner or standard they will apply for evaluating employees. And the Civil Service Commission does not have the authority to tell them what standard they must use. If an employee has takes objection to a standard or a rule that the department is applying, they can file a grievance, and that is one of their remedies in that regard. This issue has been addressed extensively by the Personnel Department. As Mr. Sperling referenced, they have made modifications to P-28. They formed a working task group to address his concerns. So his concerns have not been taken lightly by the Personnel Department, but ultimately any forms that they create or revisions that they may provide are in essence a recommendation to the department. So the Civil Service commissioners, the board, they are not being derelict in their duty by trying to impose or enforce upon city departments a particular method. They are actually restricted in doing so by other provisions of the city charter. Much of the correspondence that we've received on this issue from Mr. Sperling as well as from various unions neglect to take into consideration the overall implication of the various charter sections that relate to this issue. I don't know if
Do all the departments require ratings to be given on their employees? Is that one of the requirements?
As far as I know, all city departments use some form of a rating system. It may not necessarily be, obviously, the rating system that's being proposed here today, but they do engage in what they believe is necessary to evaluate their employees and to determine whether or not that employee is eligible to become, to receive civil service and tenured status within the city.
That's on the
And they're all
probationary.
different.
That's on the probationary.
That's correct.
Okay. Ms. Lyons?
Actually, I have two staff members who worked on this extensively.
Okay.
Linda Lanier, Personnel Department.
Steve Pressburg, Personnel Department.
The information I'd like to share is regarding the work we've done in relationship to some of the concerns that were raised by Mr. Sperling in the last couple of years. Most recently, we actually put together a performance appraisal task force composed of personnel directors from throughout the city of Los Angeles to take a real critical look, comprehensive look at P-28. In addition to that, we also went out and surveyed all of the departments in terms of their use of P-28. Also wanted to get information in terms of if they weren't using P-28, what forms were they using, and we did find that some departments are using their own specifically designed forms. As far as the task force itself, worked extensively through meetings, reviewing various documents, including inviting Mr. Sperling to come and make a presentation himself, as well as looking at the various documents that he submitted for the task force to take a look at as well. And through their work, the meetings and so forth, decided that it would be beneficial for the city to do a revision of P-28. And as a result of that, we now have P-28E and 28S, one for the employees and one for supervisors as well. That those forms were approved, those forms were disseminated this year to all city departments with the recommendation that they use those forms. Also understanding that departments that had specific evaluations that they've designed, they also have the option to continue to use their forms. So in conjunction with the performance appraisal, Personnel Department back in 2002 actually developed some guidelines for conducting performance appraisals. We issued that document. We reissued that document again this year, providing information to departments in terms of the different issues and options that are available to them in terms of evaluating employees.
Okay. Steve?
Well, the only thing I would add to that is to quote a former civil service commissioner who, in discussing the matter of a probationary discharge, these were his exact words. He said, "The first 6 months are yours. After that, they're ours." And what he meant by that was, of course, management's discretion is to make these determinations for probationary employees during the first 6 months. But after that, such a decision is going to be reviewed, obviously, in accordance with the due process provisions of the Charter. And Mr. Sperling has appeared many times at the Board of Civil Service Commissioners and asserted that there's a violation of Rule 1.26. But of course, that's his opinion because he says it does not make it so. Certainly, the departments have not indicated to us that they believe that there are grave misgivings or grave hazards in the methods by which they evaluate probationary employees. And Ms. Lanier, I don't know if she mentioned, but the unions were consulted as well on this. And it seems to be a solution, which is, of course, Mr. Sperling has a view of how this should be done and the precise form that ought to be utilized. But it's a solution in search of a problem because there aren't too many other people that believe that there is such a problem.
Okay. Mr. Parks? Okay. Anyone else, Tom? Ms. Lyons?
No, I think the only thing I would say is I've had the opportunity as a manager in the city to review this new performance evaluation and the way that it's used by supervisors in the city. And I think it is a great improvement. And I think a lot of the concerns that Mr. Sperling has presented have been addressed with this new form.
Okay, so Mr. Sperling, you've heard from the folks. I'm not going to belabor this point. The City Attorney's Office, Personnel Department, Mr. Parks and I have extensive experience with ratings, both receiving and giving, and I'm satisfied that what we have today is meeting the standard that the civil service rules require. So at this point, we're not going to recommend any changes, sir. I'm not going to, you made your statement, I listened to your statement, we have your paperwork. We're going to conclude with the comment that we're satisfied with the ratings that currently exist and the modifications that have been made. So you've had your say, we listened to you, we've got your documents, you've heard from the city representatives from personnel and city attorney's office. So we are going to receive and file this particular item on the schedule, and I appreciate the time that you took to come down and give us this information, and we're going to consider this matter received and filed, sir. So I appreciate you coming down. Thank you very much. Thank you, folks. And item number 1, which we continued since they weren't here earlier. Thank you, Mr. Sterling. We're done. We're done, sir.
On item 1, the controller is here. Is the controller representative here for item 1? Controller representative for item 1? The mayor has submitted a request from the controller for an administrative coordinator controller position and the exemption of an additional coordinator as well as an administrative deputy controller.
Re-exemption. 1 administrative coordinator. And the exemption additional. So you want to hire somebody?
We actually did hire, through the emergency hiring process, all 3 individuals. They've been on staff since July 1st, in accordance with past practice. They were all approved in the budget, yes.
So you're just asking that 2 of the positions that have been approved make them exempt, and then re-exempt one that already historically has.
Correct, and they are all in classifications that are exempt positions.
And then there's not an issue of finance, just since it's already within the budget.
That's correct. All 3 are accounted for.
Okay. Mr. Parks? Make a recommendation to approve. We will approve.
Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's complete.
Do you wish to go back to the items just to so we can get Councilmember Parks'
Why don't
concurrence
you do
on the
that?
outcome?
Let's see what he wants to do.
Mr. Parks, do you want to?
What is it now?
Okay. On item 2, Councilmember signed, the chair recommended disapproval.
Agree?
On 3, you were here. On 4, Mr. Stein recommended concurrence with jobs.
Let me just verify.
And on 5, concurrence with Public Works Committee recommendation, which is to note and file.
Yeah, on 5, I have some questions on 4, but I can deal with those when it gets to council.
Okay.
But 5, yeah, I would approve both of those, but I just have some questions I want to verify.
And on number 6, it was recommended that CLA recommendation number 5 be approved, which is to provide the city clerk with an accounting clerk too.
Okay.
And this will be for the special events fee subsidy line.
I just had another view. Being that this is brand-new work that we don't know what the amount of work is, my recommendation is that we hold off until the first of the year, because this system hasn't even been put in place yet.
Oh, they said they was gonna do that. They were gonna, this is on the,
This is a-
special events?
Yeah,
They said they've already,
I mean, for the city clerk, they,
started processing this.
So you,
but I'm saying that as far as adding a position, we should give it a couple of months to see what the real workload is before we approve a position and allow it to work until January within existing resources.
Well, according to what they said, it's already like in the mix to
I
happen.
know it's in the mix, but we don't know what the workload is gonna be.
it's gotta go through managed hiring anyway.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but I would say, my recommendation would be not to fulfill the position until you get 2 or 3 months of a sense of what the real workload is.
We can go slowly.
Well,
Okay.
Can I just ask for clarity? Are you recommending approval of the resolution authority, but also recommending that the position not be filled
Well,
until,
see, if I had my druthers, I wouldn't approve it until January
not
after
approve,
review.
not even approve
Yeah,
the resolution?
But if it goes through the managed hiring, I would rely on them to look and see if it's a real workload.
That's where it's going.
Okay.
That's what
That's
that,
what
I
we-
asked the same question about managed hiring.
We need to make sure it's a real workload, because we're projecting, and what I don't want to end up with is that we have a subsidy program that's more expensive than the waiver program. And so,
Now, we will review it for.
okay, but again, after we get 3 months of actual work, then you can determine whether it's a part of a job or a full job.
Because they touted number 6,000.
I know, but that's just like 8 million in waivers. We don't know what that is, because we never went back to account for it, so, yeah. And a lot of those permits, if it goes as the ordinance says, would not require much other than processing paper, because a large percentage of events are gonna be people coming in, getting their own signs, their own barricades, and blocking off their own street.
But they still have to process the paper.
Well, the paperwork it's a permit, street services, one shop is basically doing that. My understanding, the city clerk doesn't come in until we start
Money.
passing money out, which is the 50%. But the issue is, all of the work has been done by street services to verify, are you a nonprofit? Do you fit the criteria? It's, what I perceive is no more work than processing our GCP money. That's about what it is. And so before you give them a position, we need to know what the work is.
Can we just provide clarity for the clerk for the record?
We'll approve it,
Okay, good.
go to managed hiring
Okay.
with those directions.
With the slow process. 4 o'clock concluded, thank you.